life has a way of throwing surprises at you when you least expect them. That's exactly what happened to me on a seemingly normal Wednesday evening. I had just come back from work, my heels clicking against the wooden floor as I walked into the house. The day had been long and draining, and all I wanted was to soak in a hot bath and let the stress melt away. Little did I know that evening would leave an indelible mark on my life, one that would change the course of everything in our household. Make sure to subscribe to my channel so I can continue bringing you more fascinating true stories like this one. And don't forget to watch this video till the end and like the video. Because this story is going to be incredibly interesting, please hit the like button. To show your support, the house was quiet as I entered, which wasn't unusual. Thomas, my husband, had mentioned earlier in the day that he'd be attending a late meeting. He'd been working long hours lately, trying to make a big project deadline that left only Logan. I didn't think much of it after finishing my water. I decided to head upstairs to change into something more comfortable. The long day had left me wanting nothing more than to relax. Passing by the bathroom, I noticed the faint sound of running water and the door slightly ajar. This struck me as odd. Logan was meticulous about privacy. He always closed doors firmly, especially the bathroom door. My curiosity piqued. Hesitated for a moment before gently pushing the door open a fraction more. What I saw stopped me in my tracks. Logan was standing by the sink, his back turned to me, his shoulders hunched in a way that suggested he was concentrating on something. His movements were awkward, almost frantic, and I noticed he was shirtless, his jeans hanging loosely on his hips. In his hands he appeared to be holding a washcloth, scrubbing at something out of view. The creak of the door startled him. He spun around, his eyes wide with panic. "Oh my God, I didn't hear you come in," he exclaimed, his voice shaky. I froze. Equally startled, my eyes darted between him and the washcloth, and I felt a rush of awkwardness crash over him like a tidal wave. It wasn't the scene I had expected to walk into, and I couldn't help but feel guilty for intruding. "I'm so sorry," I stammered, my gaze away. "I didn't mean to intrude." I quickly stepped back, my heart pounding in my chest. I reached for the doorknob, ready to retreat and give him the privacy he clearly wanted. But before I could close the door, Logan's voice stopped me. "Wait," he said, his tone pleading. "It's not what you think." I hesitated, my hand hovering over the doorknob. Part of me wanted to bolt down the hallway and pretend this never happened, but another part was curious. His voice didn't carry the defensiveness of someone caught doing something wrong. Instead, it was laced with embarrassment and desperation against my better judgment. I turned back to face him, keeping my gaze fixed on his face. "Okay," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. "What's going on?" Logan looked down, his face flushed with a deep red. He seemed to be struggling to find the right words, his hands fidgeting with the washcloth. Finally, he let out a deep sigh and said, I didn't know who else to ask. Ask about what?" I pressed, gently, my curiosity growing despite the awkwardness of the situation. He shifted, uncomfortably avoiding eye contact. "It's personal," he admitted. "I've been dealing with some stuff and I don't know what to do. Dad's not here, and you're the only other person I can talk to." His vulnerability caught me off guard. Logan had always been independent, rarely opening up about anything personal. The fact that he was turning to me for help made me pause. I took a step into the bathroom, closing the door slightly behind me to give us some privacy. "All right," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "Why don't you tell me what's going on?" Logan hesitated and then finally began to explain. He spoke in vague terms at first, stumbling over his words as he tried to describe the discomfort he'd been experiencing. I listened, patiently piecing together what he was trying to say. It soon became clear that this was a sensitive issue, one he felt too embarrassed to discuss with Dad. As he talked, I couldn't help but feel a pang of empathy. It's never easy to ask for help, especially about something so personal. I could see the struggle in his eyes, the internal battle between wanting to get help, but being afraid of judgment. Okay, I said, after a moment of thought. First of all, it's good that you're paying attention to these things. It shows you care about your health. Second, there's no shame in asking questions or seeking advice. Logan looked up at me, his eyes filled with a mix of gratitude and relief. Really, you don't think it's weird? Not at all. I assured him everyone has questions about their body. At some point, it's normal. I spent the next several minutes offering him advice to the best of my ability, drawing from my own knowledge and experience. I tried to keep the conversation as practical and matter-of-fact as possible, avoiding anything that might make him feel more uncomfortable. I could tell that this conversation was a huge relief for him, even if it had been an awkward one to start as the conversation progressed. The initial awkwardness began to dissipate. Logan seemed to relax, and I could tell he appreciated having someone to talk. By the time we finished, he looked visibly calmer. He even managed a small smile. "Thanks," he said quietly, his voice almost a whisper. I didn't think I could talk to anyone about this. I returned his smile, feeling a sense of relief, that the tension had passed. "You're welcome, Logan. And remember, it's always okay to ask for help. No one has all the answers." As I left the bathroom, I couldn't help but feel a strange mix of emotions. On the one hand, I was glad I could be there for Logan when he needed someone to talk to. On the other hand, the situation had been so unexpected and so out of the ordinary that I wasn't sure how to process it. Something about the encounter felt significant, like it had marked a shift in our relationship. I just didn't know what it meant or how it would play out in the days to come. I tried to shake off the strange feeling as I went about the rest of my evening, but it lingered in the back of my mind like a shadow. The house was quiet, the only sound, the faint hum of the air conditioning. Thomas came home late that night, tired but cheerful, completely unaware of the peculiar conversation that had taken place in his absence. As I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't help but replay the events of the evening in my mind. Something had changed, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it all. It knew was that life in our household would never feel quite the same again. The days following that unexpected encounter were peculiar, to say the least. Wasn't that anything overtly dramatic? Happened, in fact, everything on the surface appeared normal. Thomas carried on with his work as usual. Logan maintained his routine of part-time shifts and studying, and I continued balancing my responsibilities at home and work. But beneath the surface there was an unspoken tension, subtle but palpable, between Logan and me. It wasn't just that we were now more aware of each other's vulnerabilities. It was something deeper. A shift in the dynamic had occurred, one that I wasn't sure how to navigate. I was chopping vegetables when I heard the familiar sound of his truck pulling into the driveway. I paused, my night knife hovering mid-air, wondering how I should greet him. The awkwardness that had settled between us the past few days had created a wall that I wasn't sure how to break down. When the front door opened, I called out, "Hey, Logan," trying to sound casual. He didn't answer right away, but I heard his footsteps. Ash walked into the kitchen. He looked tired but smiled faintly. "Hey," he said quietly, "what's for dinner?" I smiled back, relieved that he wasn't acting as distant as he had in the past few days. "Just pasta. Are you hungry?" "Yeah, I'm starving," he said. Walking over to the counter to get a glass of water, we ate together, in silence at first, the only sound being the clink of forks against plates. But I noticed that Logan seemed more at ease than he had in days. His smile seemed a little more genuine, and his body language was less stiff. After a while, he set his fork down and looked at me, a faint blush coloring his cheeks. "I've been thinking about what you said the other night." He started, hesitating for a moment before continuing. "And I just wanted to thank you again for listening." I glanced up from my plate, meeting his eyes. The sincerity in his voice was enough to make my heart soften. I had been waiting for this moment, unsure of how to respond. but glad that I felt comfortable enough to speak. "Of course, Logan," I said, my voice gentle. "I'm glad I could help." There was another long pause, and this time I didn't feel the same awkwardness I had earlier. It felt like we were truly talking, not just filling the space with polite conversation. "You've always been nice to me," he continued, his voice quieter now, and I didn't want you to think that I didn't appreciate it. I nodded, unsure of how to express how much his words meant to me. "I know it's not always easy," I said after a moment, "but I'm glad. You know you can talk to me anytime." He smiled again, this time with a little more ease. "I'll try." "To remember that," he said, reaching for another bite of his pasta. As dinner progressed, we slipped into more casual conversation. We talked about his study, show his part-time job was going, and the latest show we were both watching on Netflix. It was a small step forward, but a step. Nonetheless, I realized that though things had been awkward after our initial conversation, Logan was beginning to open up in small ways. Later that evening, after we finished eating, that I sat down on the couch to unwind with a book, I heard Logan retreat to his room, his footsteps soft against the floor. I couldn't help but wonder if he was still processing everything we had talked about. The next few days were more of the same. Thomas came home later each night. His work was demanding more and more of his time, and Logan, though less distant than he had been, still kept to himself. In many ways, we shared brief but significant conversations during dinner, and he seemed more comfortable around me. But there was an underlying tension that neither of us seemed willing to address. It was during one of those quiet evenings about a week after our conversation in the bathroom that Logan did something that caught me completely off guard. It was nearing bedtime, and I was curled up on the couch watching the latest episode of a drama. Suddenly, Logan appeared in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "Can I talk to you?" he asked, his voice just above a whisper. I sat up quickly, unsure of what to expect. "Of course, come on in." He hesitated for a moment before stepping fully into the room. He seemed hesitant, his posture stiff, as if he wasn't sure what he was about to say. "What's on your mind?" I asked gently, trying to create a safe space. For him, Logan shifted from foot to foot, avoiding my gaze for a moment before speaking. "I've been thinking about the stuff he talked to you about, and I think I need to tell Dad. I don't know how, but I think he needs to know what I'm going through." So, stunned by his words, the vulnerability he showed now was different from before. This was a step forward. He was taking responsibility for his feelings and acknowledging that he needed help from Thomas, not just from me. I smiled, trying to reassure him. "That's a big step, Logan, and I think Thomas will appreciate you coming to him. It's not easy, but it's important." He nodded, his eyes meeting mine. There was a flicker of gratitude in his gaze, and I could tell that the decision to speak to Thomas wasn't an easy one for him, but he had come a long way. "I don't want to make things weird between us," he said quietly. "I know it's been different lately." Is hooked my head, feeling a rush of warmth toward him. "It's not weird at all." I assured him, "We're family. Logan, we help each other no matter what." He gave me a small smile and nodded, then turned to leave. Thanks for everything, he said over his shoulder as he left the room. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I felt a deep sense of pride in him. He was learning to communicate, to seek help, and to process his emotions in a healthy way. I couldn't help but feel like I was witnessing a pivotal moment in his growth. The next day, Thomas came home from work. Earlier than usual, I could see the exhaustion on his face, but there was a certain lightness to his steps as he walked in the door. "Hey," he said, dropping his briefcase by the door. "How's everything going?" "Good," I said, smiling. I think Logan has something on his mind, though Thomas raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "He's been more open lately." I explained, and he mentioned he wanted to talk to you about something important. Thomas's expression softened, a mixture of concern and anticipation, crossing his face. "I'll talk to him," he said, a quiet resolve in his voice. "Thanks for letting me know." That evening after dinner, Thomas and Logan sat down together in the living room. I couldn't hear much of their conversation, but I saw Logan lean in speaking earnestly to his father. Thomas listened intently, his face filled with concern, but also warmth. I could tell that this was a pivotal moment for their relationship, a moment where Logan had crossed the threshold into adulthood, and Thomas was ready to meet him there. As the weeks passed, life began to settle back into a rhythm. The unspoken tension between Lo and me gradually faded. He no longer avoided me, and I could sense that he was still processing the things he'd shared, but he seemed lighter somehow, more himself. Thomas and Logan spent more time together strengthening their bond, and it was clear that Thomas was making an effort to be more present for his son one weekend. Thomas suggested we take a day trip to the lake. It was his way of trying to strengthen the bond between the three of us, and I thought it was a wonderful idea. The weather was perfect, with clear blue skies and a gentle breeze. We packed a picnic, loaded the car, and set off for a day of relaxation and fun at the lake. We spent hours swimming, playing frisbee, and lounging on the shore. Logan seemed genuinely happy, laughing and joking with Thomas in a way I hadn't seen before. It warmed my heart to see them connecting, and I felt hopeful that this trip was a turning point for all of us. As the sun began to set, casting golden hues over the water we sat on the beach, enjoying the last remnants of the day. Thomas had fallen asleep on a blanket, his snore mixing with the sound of the waves.